This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Thank you, Jeff, our city planner. Just double-checked I didn't have crackers in my teeth and go on to the TV. My name is Nicole LaChapelle. I'm the mayor of this city, Easthampton. I'm thrilled to see so many of you here. This is a very important topic and really shapes a lot of what comes for Easthampton based on what folks, some of whom are in this room, have done to Easthampton to bring it to the place we are right now. This is about, the meeting today is about the mill access and the mills that we're sitting in and how we can bring them up to the vision of today's residents, stakeholders, business owners, and whatnot, just like we did back in '08 when we looked at the town, this area, and started really going after heavy investment with people like mass development and looking at MassWorks money, buzzwords we hear around town. Well, it's time to focus back kind of in a way where it all started, in the mills. I call it the Pleasant Street Mill District. Not an official name, but I want our mill district to stand out. Everybody has, oh, I'm gonna shop in the mills. When you're here, you come and you party and you live and you sleep and you go to Food Truck Friday at the Pleasant Street Mills. So if I say that, it's not, nothing official has changed. I just do that. So this is one part of a lot of initiatives that we've done. You can click on the website, easthamptonma.gov, under planning current projects. It's listed here. And underneath are several other, 10, 11, 12. They're all pieces of the puzzle. So I don't have the capacity nor the attention span to focus on a project like this because it's minute and needs a lot of group work, and I really am just not that person. But what I am is a person that can pull resources together from a lot of different people's point of view, visions, hopes, dreams, fears, and get us all in a room and go get money from mass development and be able to hire our wonderful team and work with our wonderful business owners, our landowners who saw what this place could be so long ago to make the whole city better. So tonight, we're gonna be talking about the mills and access. I mean, it is kind of crazy how successful the mills have been, given the 3 access points behind. Like, it's just hard to describe to somebody. We're gonna make that better. We're also gonna talk about a bridge over that. For me, though, this piece of the puzzle really goes for what started over in New City, what really started with the new school, what will now go to Pleasant Green. Because we can have the most amazing mill district in the world, but the one thing I know we don't, and I speak for the landowners, the mill owners themselves, we do not want it to be a wall, and I'm not joking. I remember becoming mayor, and the first thing I went over there and thanked people, and they thought that the park was private, and it belonged to the mills. They didn't know they could come into the mills. They thought it was for somebody else. So we've really done a lot of work to break that wall down. I think we've done it in New City. We're going to continue the environmental projects, but this, everybody has to know about not only the potential, but the amazing things that happen here already and have just grown over the last 10 years. So I thank you for coming. Is there another public engagement?
Maybe in August.
So I promise you in August, there'll be snacks. That's a little self-pointed for me, but we'll have snacks. I'll take that on. But I'll just end. It's an area improvement. We have several improvements to do always. It's a continual process. And if we stop, obviously things stay in the place, but more importantly for me, the way I look at it, and Jeff hears this almost every week, it's fairness. If we stop in place, we have no chance of fairness. And there is not one person, business, owner in this room that we can do without. If we want things to be fair and we want to be our best, they need to be fair. They need to be equitable, not equal. And I see you all as a big part of this process and another great project that the planning department has put together, and we've got an awesome team to work with, and I know all of you are just kick-ass. So have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you before August. Take care.
thank you, Mayor LaChapelle. She's been a really strong supporter of taking on these projects and planning forward. So, without a leader like that, we wouldn't really be able to do all these projects. So I really thank you very much for all the support. I do want to thank business owners and residents who are here. It's really important. We can't really have these meetings and come up with these plans without participation. So you being here really matters. A couple of the things I just kind of wanted to touch on were that one of the primary objectives of this project is to get the 3 entrances to the back of the mills to a place where we have a design that is a little bit better for cars and is a lot better for pedestrians. So the pattern that we're in right now is that where the state has money for construction of projects, they want you, and they're asking municipalities to do these planning efforts to lead up to that. So one of the deliverables is a 25% design of the 3 entrances, whatever that looks like when we're done. And then while we're doing this, we are, want to talk about parking is a big subject that we will tackle through this project. Not to talk too much lingo, but wayfinding. So signage is really important for people to know how to get behind the mills and what's back there. And it's something, those 2 things, the access and the wayfinding really kind of got left off in 2015 when we finished the improvements. This is kind of that last step. So we have the Manhattan Rail Trail that runs behind the mills. It's beautiful for the city. But one of the things that we hear a lot of is if you're on Union Street, for example, and you don't know the mills are down here, you just don't know. So we haven't done all these things that we can do. Some of them are low-hanging fruit, and some of them are just big planning initiatives. But this project should look at that. There's Millside Park, which is in the back, just making sure that everyone knows that that's an asset for this neighborhood. And then one of the sort of more grandiose concepts is a pedestrian bridge over Lower Mill Pond. That has been on paper since at least 2002. There was a similar vision that got set up for this whole area in 2002, and so many of the things have been accomplished that we need this kind of next phase to lay us out a roadmap, and that will really allow us to have buy-in from the community and the business owners and the mill owners, but also that gives us, that information to bring to funding sources. So something like a bridge is kind of a big legacy project, but there are some of those that get funded, and we wouldn't be able to go for funding without having it kind of put in another plan. That's 2023. So I'm very grateful for everyone to be here. I'm going to hand it over to our consultant team. So it's Luke and John and Jenny are all from VHB. And we're doing this with a grant from Mass Development. So we're happy that they were willing to fund this project. And presentation, and then we're going to do some breakout groups to get you guys looking at a map and get input. And then a final session to just look at the entrances. So hopefully we'll get out of here by 6:45 or 7. But really thank you all for being here. I'm going to hand it over to the teams.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, I'm Luke from VHB. This is my colleague Jenny, and John's in the back. So yeah, I think Jeff gave a great synopsis of the project. And as for tonight, we have a relatively brief slide deck, really just to set the table for the conversations that we can have over there. I think that's the real pulp of the meeting, is to get feedback and ideas from you all about the spaces around these mills and how they exist now and how they might be improved upon. Yeah, thanks. So here's the content of our slideshow. Give a quick project overview. Jenny can walk through the existing site conditions. Next, we can talk about issues and opportunities at 4 specific moments along the properties, which are important and interesting to us, and curious to hear your thoughts on those. Next, we have a live poll that we can do. It'd be great to get some feedback from you live. If you have your cell phone on you, you'll be able to input your responses to some survey questions. And then we'll head over there for some group discussions. So here are the mill properties, as you could see. And I think that we've already walked through most of this. But as Jeff mentioned, we'll be looking, sorry, is this? Sure. Is that better? Okay. So here are the mill properties. As Jeff mentioned, we'll be looking at this entire linear array of parking facilities, which all of this parking is sort of shared by all of the tenants, the businesses that exist in the mill, well, the tenants and the residents that exist in the mill. So really we're interested in the functionality of this space for people who are in their cars and need to park, for pedestrians who are traversing it, people on their bicycles doing the same, and also how these parking spaces, or I should say parking facilities, interact with the rail trail, which you can see running along here, and the parks. And then the three entranceways, which Jeff mentioned, are at the American Legion, here in the center, and then down here at Putnam Court. Next, so here's just a little history of the mills. Industrial development along the Manhan River began in the late 1600s, and then Broad Brook was dammed in 1847, creating Upper Mill Pond. Lower Mill Pond was created 12 years later. Existing Pleasant Street Mill was constructed in 1859 as a hydropower center, and at that time, Lower Mill Pond was a dump site for mill waste. The mill sold to the West Boylston Manufacturing Company in the early 1900s, which operated the resale and subdivision of the mills in 1932. And they continued to operate until the 1960s, largely vacant by the end of the 20th century. So much history that can be reflected in how the mills are treated today, but currently reshaped and reimagined with small-scale retail, light industry, artist studios, event venues, and apartments. So we hope to build on this momentum and help to restore pedestrian connectivity and outdoor gathering spaces. Next slide, Jenny. So here's our project schedule. This is the first public meeting tonight, and following this, based on the input that we receive, along with the input that we've received from the owners of the mills and the tenants in the mills, we'll move forward with concept planning. So basically, we'll be taking the entire linear length of that parking area and doing concept plans in terms of new bike lanes, walkways, converting some of the parking use to open space or vice versa, based on everything that we're hearing. So we'll work with the town and the owners of the mill back and forth iteratively to advance those drawings. Meeting again probably in August. We'll get that scheduled. But at that second touch point, we'll have some concept plans that we can share with you to get direct feedback on what we've come up with, working towards a final end date in the fall to get the final deliverables. Next slide. So, Jenny, if you can present a few slides on site conditions.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Nelson, and I'm an urban planner at VHB, and I'm working with Luke on this project. So I did some of the existing site conditions analysis using some GIS data and also using some publicly available data through Easthampton. So first of all, we looked at the existing conditions surrounding the mill complex, specifically, and which we'll get into, is the site elevation, hydrology, all features which could contribute or constrain the development along the parking. Next. So there is some elevation change along this property. So the Lower Mill Pond sits at around 130 feet in elevation, and then there's about a 20 feet increase up to where the Manhan Rail Trail exists, and then that's also where the mills sit, and then there's about a 20 feet increase up to the road, and that's where some parking comes under here. And so that is something that we'll have to be conscious of, especially for ADA regulations and for accessibility down to the Manhan Rail Trail. So for hydrology, Lower Mill Pond is the primary water body in the project area. So you see the blue zone is Lower Mill Pond as it exists, and then there's a 100-foot buffer, which is regulated by the Wetlands Protection Act. If any work happens within that zone, then we have to get it permitted by Easthampton's Conservation Commission. So that kind of constrains where work can happen. Work within the buffer zone is permitted, but again, you will need to have a process through the Conservation Commission to get that to be able to happen. And then the red dotted line is the flood zone. So next we have wetlands, which surround the Lower Mill Pond. The WPA also regulates 100-foot buffers around these wetlands, and it's the same process for hydrology and for the water bodies themselves, in that any construction within 100 feet has to be permitted by the Conservation Commission. So the buildings themselves, the mill complex consists of several adjacent and interconnected properties. So furthest to the west, you have National Nonwovens, followed by Eastworks, INSA, Keystone, where we are right now, Brickyard, the Paragon Arts and Industry Building, and then finally a little building that's not connected right now is the American Legion building all the way to the east. So these are the vehicular entry points that Jeff was talking about. That is kind of the focus of this meeting. So we have the western entrance, which is where Putnam Court exists. You have the central entrance, which is where Keystone and INSA exist on either side. And then you have the eastern entrance by American Legion. And so these are the currently used vehicle entrances, but we have some ideas of what could possibly change for this. We would love to hear your thoughts on these entryways as well, and what's working, what's not working. Next, we have parking. So the mill complex has roughly 780 parking spaces. 746 serve the mill complex, and then there are 34 parking spaces that provide visitors access to Millside Park. As far as open space goes, there are several open spaces around the mill area, but the one that we're focusing on specifically for this project is Millside Park and the connected green space that follows the Manhand Rail Trail. And the Millside Park, as I'm sure you know, is a venue for Mill Pond Live Concert Series and is a big community gathering space for kids and for elderly and for everyone in between. The Manhand Rail Trail is another community feature. It's a 6-mile multi-use Manhand Rail Trail, which runs through Easthampton, passes right by the mills, as you can see here, and it leads to Southampton, northeast to the Oxbow, and north to Northampton, where it connects to the Northampton Trail System. So we really want to protect this feature. We want to bring community members out here and to enjoy this feature. We want to kind of expose it a little bit more. We would love to hear your feedback on this as well, and how we can kind of bring this to the forefront of the mill complex. And now I'm going to pass it back to Luke to go over issues and opportunities.
Thanks, Jenny. So I'll just run through these quickly. Jenny, if you could advance the slide. So we have, I think, 4 slides set up looking at key moments in the Mill District. So first is the western entrance. Just a couple of issues that we observed on our site walk and in our conversation with the owners and the tenants. First, poor signage and wayfinding. I think that's a bullet point that shows up throughout the complex. As you know, as Jeff mentioned at the beginning, the area around the mills, it advanced light years between 2010 and 2020. It came a long way. But signage and wayfinding is something that fell to the wayside a bit. So in terms of letting people know that it's an entryway and letting people know what that entryway, which businesses are served by that entryway, very lacking now. So something that could and should be improved upon. No sidewalks or bike lanes, poor lighting in the area. There's an unused security gate with a guard box, something of an eyesore. Also interesting is the catwalk that runs over the entranceway. We were told that some truckers are afraid to go under it. They think that they're not going to get the coverage they need, so they turn around. Whether that could stay or go or be modified, an open question. And then again, poor maneuvering for trucks that are entering to make deliveries, et cetera. Next slide is the central entrance. So at the central entrance, which is right between Keystone and INSA, next to INSA. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Keystone, got you. Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. Still figuring out the buildings, but so yeah, central entrance. Same issue with signage and wayfinding and directional. It only allows for one-way traffic. No sidewalk or bike lanes built into that entrance. Lighting is an open question. Confusing, potentially unsafe for vehicles. There's the vacant standalone structure, which we see as a great point of opportunity for a new business or an interesting use at that location. It was noted to us that there's reckless drivers in that area. And then another thing that was pointed out was that there's no direct connection to the Manhan Rail Trail. There is an entrance, I think, a bit further down, but there's not one that's coincident with the arrival of cars or pedestrians at that entrance. Next slide, Jenny. All right, so for the Millside Park, there was also a lot of discussion around that with the owners and the tenants. Again, signage and wayfinding. Sidewalks or bike lanes, how do those figure into this area? As well as, by the way, we should add to that bicycle parking, charging for electric bicycles, things like that. Poor lighting in the parking lot and Millside Park. We actually heard about a lack of lighting up and down the rail trail as well for the entirety of the length along the district. Reckless drivers, that came up a lot. Really, and that's a problem throughout, which is the safety, both real and perceived, of pedestrians and bicyclists and people who are driving cars. And by the way, there's a lot that could be done in terms of design to mitigate issues of reckless driving and traffic issues. And then the connectivity between the mill parking lot and the Millside Park. There's a small pathway here, but could that be emphasized? Could it be doubled with another point of entry through the retention wall? That was one idea that emerged. And just somehow, through placemaking and signage and wayfinding, emphasize a stronger connection between these two spaces, which are both popular and well used. And we heard about the concert series that takes place at Millside Park in September. So, and actually programming is another interesting thing that we look forward to hearing from you all on in terms of food trucks and concerts and outdoor events. That's happening a lot. There's a lot of energy and support for those events. So how can they be even more successful or more coordinated with one another? Things like that. Lastly is the eastern entrance near the American Legion building. Signage and wayfinding is an issue here for people driving in. Again, should you take this entrance or another one? Depends on what business you're going to. Those things could be clarified through signage and wayfinding. There is a turn when you come in this entrance to the parking lots, which can be a bit of a white knuckler in terms of what's around the corner. Visibility, and it's a 90-degree turn. So again, what can be done to improve the space and make that a little safer and more successful? The American Legion's parking lot also, it serves the American Legion in terms of the capacity of the parking, but how could it be better articulated through curbs, open space, et cetera? Lighting, and again, reckless drivers. I think a bigger point, I don't know if it was made already, is on the parking capacity of the whole district in general. The lots fill up at certain peak times. So while we're doing our concept planning, we want to be bold with adding lanes for pedestrians and bicyclists, but we understand that there's an imperative to maintain the roughly the amount of parking that's out there, because it's all needed. In fact, additional parking is needed. So that's something that we're aware of, and would also be curious to hear your thoughts on that. Okay, next slide. Oh yeah, so placemaking. Here's a few slides just to define some terms that we've been using, and some examples from around the country, really. But placemaking, Arsenal Yards is one that's closer to our office, Worthington Street in Springfield, Mass., and then Gallery Alley in Wichita, Kansas. We used all these because they're outdoor spaces near commercial establishments that create a sense of place outdoors, allow for programming, really strengthen the value of the businesses surrounding them. Next is an umbrella alley in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, another good example. This is an alley in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. We chose a few of these because we see alleyways here at the mill. A lot of them are not necessarily programmed. They're used by vehicles in many cases. Question we have is, do all of those need to be used by vehicles? Could the district be as strong if you limit the drive aisles that are actually used by vehicles, take some of them and make them pedestrian only? We feel that there could be some great opportunity for that at different points throughout the district. And again, something like that requires thinking outside of the box. It's different than what's out there now. So we'd be curious to hear your thoughts on all that. Here's some examples of signage and wayfinding, all from around Massachusetts. To us, it's let's think a little beyond simply signs that state the information that people need to access, but really using branding and interesting. I mean, look, there's a lot of creative establishments here at the mill, and it's got a real rich flavor to it of independent businesses and breweries, et cetera. So how can we make it more fun, welcoming, but also give people a sense of where the hell am I supposed to go to park, or et cetera. Next. All right, so the live poll. Do you want to run this one, Jen? Thanks.
So I created a live poll to try to get some feedback in real time from you. So you can take out your phones, use your camera feature, and zoom in on the QR code. You should be able to do it from there. I tried earlier. And if not, there's also that link. I know it's a little funky, but you can also input that link in a browser, and it should be able to open up. I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to go through the poll, and I'll pull up the live responses. So it looks like most people use the western entrance. There's a battle between eastern and central. About 2 stars for pedestrian safety, which is kind of what we had thought. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. About half for biking, half for not biking. people feel a little bit more comfortable biking as opposed to pedestrian. Yeah. That's a big one. Yep. So for question 5, how would you rate the mill complex on signage and wayfinding? Out of 5 stars, the average rating was 1.65. So, and the highest rating we got for that was 3. How would you rate the mill complex on availability of parking? 3.3, so a little bit better than average. How would you rate public gathering spaces around the mill complex? Average rating is 3.19. We have the most for 4 stars, got the most votes, and 3 was second. Then we got a lot of responses for what should VHB consider for the Pleasant Street Mills area vision plan. 25% of the people answered parking for this question. Also garden space, parking lots, rail trail, pedestrian space, town and more parking, water safety, parking up on the street, pedestrian access, lighting, crosswalks. So thank you for all of your feedback. This is definitely something that is useful for us because we can take this right back to our office and really consider it and look into some of these answers. So I really appreciate you giving this feedback, and I think it's also interesting for some of you to see these answers and see, what people are agreeing with and what people are thinking in your own community.
All right, so thanks. That's the context. That's who we are and the process that we're working on. But again, the key outcome of tonight is to hear from you guys. We have 3 tables. If you could somehow manage to equally distribute yourselves among the 3 tables, I'll facilitate and take notes at one table. Jenny will do the same at another, and John will do the same at a third. And really, we have 2 questions. The first question is, what do you see as the greatest challenges for this district? And then second, what improvements would you like to see made to the area? So obviously, extremely open-ended questions, but that's because we didn't want to lead you in any specific direction, but rather hear your organic thoughts on it. And if everybody can engage in dialogue with one another, and please chime in if you have thoughts, it's going to be really valuable for our process. And we'll take notes. If we have time at the end, John has some slides that he can share as well, if we have some time, which is specifically on the 3 entranceways. So let's target, right now it is 6:15. Yeah, so let's target 25 minutes for the group discussions. And then maybe, let's do this at the end of the 25 minutes. If each group could nominate a person to report out to the room, that would be great too. Thanks.
Hello. My name is Trevor Healy, and I own Healy Guitars. I'm at the west entrance of Eastworks, but actually at the back side. And currently, signage is a really big deal for, I think, all the businesses at the back end. And kind of having the experience of confusion amongst all of us as business owners in each of the buildings. Confusion of not being able to really explain to your clients or even delivery drivers best way to come to where you need to be. There were lots of ideas around signage. One that stood out was painting the buildings' names on the bike path itself. There's an unused possible entrance at the back end of Keystone, kind of between INSA and, I'm not even sure, but like the possibility of having some back entrance from that back parking into Keystone, which would then be ADA compliant. There's also issues with parking across the street, which that sort of safety issue of the crosswalk, the parking spaces kind of being half painted, half unpainted, not really knowing exactly where to be. There's been a semi-vacant building at the very far east end by the VFW hall that would free up a bunch of space for entryway coming in that direction. And I think there's just a lot of confusion that in the back parking that creates reckless driving. Not so much as the drivers are reckless, but the situation is less than ideal. Is there other things that kind of covers what we went over? Yeah, thank you.
This gentleman, thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Noah. I'm a skate park advocate and a resident from across the street. I live on Berkeley Street for the last few years. I frequent the Mill District very often on the pond, on the bike paths, and the businesses. We went over a lot, I'd say, at our table. But the eastern entrance by the Legion is certainly sketchy and not welcoming to pedestrians or bikes. The bike access is you have to go all the way to Ferry Street or kind of all the way to the western entrance of Eastworks. Pleasant Street in general was scary for biking and even walking on the street in general. And that was something that was worrisome about building more access to the place without connecting the neighborhoods, I guess on the western end of Pleasant Street to the Mill District. Using the boat ramp and the pond and being able to have signage of access and usage of that and what it's there for and how to get into the pond and so forth, new boat launch, emphasize kayaking and uses and like that. The Manhan Trail was too hot and had no character. It's just kind of like boring. There's no shade. There's very limited access into the Mill District, and the entrances need more presence and different avenues to get to them, since it feels very like one-way-ish to get into the Mill District off of Manhan. Reckless driving, for sure. People drive too fast, so figuring out ways to get speed bumps or other slow down mechanisms in the whole back of the Mill District. Sidewalks along the northern edge of the buildings, and some concept of event parking, whether that's shuttling or signage of other areas to park close enough to town, and then having some sort of access back into the mills. A sculpture garden at one of the bump outs off the Manhan Trail, just to add more character to the place. Eastworks have big plans. I think probably the biggest thing we hit was that the center entrance right now, that's a one-way between Eastworks and the Keystone building. I think everyone was in agreement that that should basically be pedestrian access only and no more cars, and to create a really nice ADA accessible thoroughway for bikes and pedestrians with a new entrance onto Manhan directly off of that. And I think that's everything. Oh, and there should absolutely be a skate park at Millside Park, because that, and I think that's it. Oh, yeah, oh, right, and the bridge, we're saying that rather than the pylons that are visible from Ferry Street, that is a very long span, there's another set of pylons that feed from behind Eastworks into the graveyard off of, I guess that's New City. Everett, yeah, and that would really change the game for New City residents and for Mill District to be able to access town in a different way. So the bridge, I think as Jeff Bagg put it, was a legacy project, and I think one that would definitely benefit our whole community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Jasmine Montanero. I own Keystone Vintage Market, and we are just down the hall in this building, Keystone Mill. And but we kind of, everything we said, you guys have said, basically, but I think there's some things on here. I'm just gonna go look through them real quick. So we have a lot of issues with businesses in the front not having a lot of parking access from the back. People get trapped back there, and they're wandering around back there calling me, going, where do I go? And I'm like, I will literally go on the street and flag you down. Like, I just did that today. And so we definitely need signage. We need wayfinding from the back to the front. One of the bigger things is the Google directions. It brings you to the back. If you type in 122 Pleasant Street, you're going to the back. I tried to change that. I petitioned Google. Nothing has changed it. So somebody said maybe a separate address for the back. Let's see. There's not a lot of lighting on the western entrance. We had, let's see. There's not a lot of trash and recycling on the trail. I don't know if there's any in the park, but there's not a lot on the trail. So when you're trying to find somewhere to put your dog bag or whatever, you have to use the dumpsters, and not everybody wants to do that. The center egress was too narrow for cars, so maybe make a pedestrian. I think somebody said that. Let's see. We were talking about a website for the Mill District because we don't have a community group for sharing events. So when things are going on, it'd be really nice if we knew about it so we could cross-market and tell people about it so we know what's happening. And then some events can hurt other businesses due to lack of parking, so parking. Again. Let's see. And then, okay, I'll go fast. Let's see. Oh, so the same thing that was said about the rail trail is that there's a big, the big wall. So maybe if we could have murals painted by local artists, or even just signage saying what's what, so there's something up there when you're just riding by. Maybe a bigger playground area. Skate park. Yep. We talked about why it failed before, because the mills used to be vacant. There wasn't a rail trail back then, and so they were talking about Greenfield, the Greenfield skate park, and how successful it's been. And let's see, the bridge. Let's see. Oh, the Paragon building, considering opening the overhead walkway, which that would be really exciting, because if you have access to that, you could be in that building and then kind of walk through the mills, which would be really cool if you could get to different mills together. Parking. Let's see, Greenbelt. What was the other thing? Oh, pop-up event space maybe for all the businesses to use. It would affect parking, but maybe we could figure it out. Or maybe even a shuttle from the rear parking to the businesses, and then a zip line. That was my personal favorite. Maybe a zip line, maybe a new business opportunity. That would be really good. And yeah, I think that's it.
That was awesome. Thank you. What we're going to try to do is, I know it's getting late, everyone probably wants to go, but John is going to queue up a couple slides of what a concept plan would start to look like. So if you have maybe 5 or 10 more minutes, if we could just bring you back to the chairs for a couple more, just to look at what concepts, this is early concepts, so they were made before your input. But if you have a couple more minutes to spare, it'd be great, and then we'll wrap up.
I talked too fast.
No, you did great.
All right, so I just want to clarify that these concepts were made before any of these events happened tonight, and I swear some of you were sitting in my office while I was putting these together, because you're going to see a common theme for some of these. The zip line was a surprise. I didn't expect that. But so these are very crude, and they were based on input that we received so far, and they're on an aerial. And we downloaded the aerial from the city's GIS, but when we brought the scale up on the aerials, you'll see the property lines are like 20 feet wide. So take them with that grain of salt. So we basically had 3 concepts for the developments. This is the first one that we came up with on the the west side. So this is Putnam Court, and Putnam Court actually turns the corner and goes into Searles Street. So what we are looking at here, this is a lot that's owned by National Nonwoven. So when you come in right now, this is just a free-for-all. I actually pulled in here once and there were cars parked parallel with this all the way down. You come in off the street and you're going to broadside somebody. So the thought is, because it's a public street, to give this definition, make it look like a street. We're, again, toying. You can see how wide the property lines are. Toying with maybe getting rid of the sidewalk on this side, pushing the street over towards the east, and then putting a sidewalk down this side here with a curb cut into this parking area here. As you come down, you can turn the corner. This is the most important street only because if vehicles, large trucks are coming in, they're coming in this way here. They're not coming down Searle and going this way. So we would like to see if we can make this site, this roadway a little wider. And just as a note, part of our work is we have actual survey done of all these 3 egress ports. So the next time you see those, we'll have concepts done on actual real existing conditions data. And property lines won't be 20 feet thick, I tell you that. So the next one was the center entrance. Apologize for not showing up as well, but this is creating that center pedestrian area that everyone seemed to have been mentioning. So the other part of it is that when you come in through here, the sidewalk actually ends here. And you're basically walking on a painted sidewalk at that point. So basically closing this off and extending the sidewalk down so you have a very short crossing at the roadway and moving this curb cut over onto the side. You can see we haven't done any design on that. We don't know what is really needed there. But from a pedestrian safety point of view, this is the very important because of the volume of traffic on Pleasant Street. You come down in through here, so vehicular traffic would basically go to this area here. Then it's all pedestrian down to the end. This actually goes a little bit more. There's some green space in here. But again, keeping this building for whatever its intended purpose might be, but basically capitalizing on the pedestrian space here. So you can imagine, you all know what that area looks like. Imagine it like the one in Springfield with the lights overhead, these nice little twinkle lights over here. I really like these. I'm going to get some for my house. But that's going to make it a very inviting area that everybody can capitalize on. On the east end of it, we're talking about the American Legion. I think we heard somebody say that there's room over here for a curb cut. I don't know how you guys are in my office, but there it is right there. And what we did is this one, we tried to sever the American Legion from this, just to get rid of a conflict point. And we have 2 options here. The first is we're considering basically taking down that building addition that's on the end. So if you see that, right, as you're coming down here, your line of sight then increases much more further than if you were right here. And in having this as a long, gentle curve without this conflict point makes that a much safer entrance. The other part that we're looking at is down over here. You can see this is the property line. We end up stealing a little bit of land from the detention basin in the wetland area that's over there, moving this row of parking out so that we could create a 90-degree parking row here. And then what we gained by turning these 90 degrees, we took away here. So instead of coming in and having this S-turn, you basically have a gradual turn, or gradual shift. No parking, nothing to conflict it with it. There may be some loading docks in here that we have to take into account, but this is the general concept for what we're looking at. Again, trying to improve safety. Second round for concept 2, we start back over on the west end. Clicked the wrong one. So the difference with this one is basically adding in a second curb cut on this area here so that you have this kind of flow through. This area is really not wide enough for parking. Right now, if you park here, you back out into Putnam Court, and that's just not safe, particularly where this comes around the corner here. So we have yet to commit what anything would be done there. But again, you can see we have done some striping to try and make this better. Curb cut down over here into other pieces for National Nonwoven. In the center, basically converting this, so there are arrows here, they're very tough to see, but we converted this over into a formal one direction, which it most likely would be best benefited by going out. But making it formal so that you get rid of the cones and the sandwich boards on the end, making sure that people understand that. And then still continuing with the theme of changing this curb cut through here so that you could improve the sidewalk that was along Pleasant Street. And lastly, on the east, going back to the original design, removing this, basically creating this curb cut connection. But you can see even with this building gone and this opened up, this actually becomes easier to traverse through here. Again, with signage, oncoming traffic. There is another option that we're looking at is basically if that building had to stay there, taking this and moving it way over onto the Allegiant property so that we could continue this curve, but basically having to provide ADA access to that door because that's a very steep grade. One of the concepts that was brought up was how to make this, this entrance ADA compliant because of the slope. So obviously at this stage we don't have that into consideration, but that's something that we would do as we go through. So that's it. Any questions that I can answer for you?
What do you mean by 90-degree parking?
Oh, so right now the parking is on an angle. So typically with angled parking, your direction of travel should be in the direction of the parking. So if you're coming this way, you pull into a space, you back up. So angled parking is really conducive of one-way travel. Problem here is you have two-way travel. So if you're coming down through here, what you end up doing is backing into those spaces. So what we do is by shifting this over, we take the curb line and move it further away from the building so we can get parking that is 90 degrees to the travel lane versus on an angle. 90-degree parking is always more efficient than an angle. Yep.
You did mention it, but that white space on the left is an active one.
Yeah. We haven't done anything with it yet, so yeah, but that's good to know.
Who owns the little red random spot there that kind of blocks them?
That building?
Yeah.
I think that's the same owner as this building here.
Oh, okay, all right. So you
Yep.
kind of like go to him and be like, hey, can we try to
We haven't had any conversations like that yet. So. Yeah. Yeah. Just have to look at that. Yeah. Sir.
Do you have to look into all the roads that go between the buildings as part of this, as far as access to businesses in there?
Would that, accesses to the businesses is not part of our scope, but wayfinding is. So what we're looking at is that if we can focus on these three egress points, however they are, and then one of the great ideas that came up was creating additional breaks at the bikeway, walkway, and then there having a sign that says if you take these stairs, you have access to the businesses right in front of you. I mean, that's a great suggestion. All right.
That was awesome. So I just want to wrap us up because we're later than 7. There's a sign-in sheet. If you didn't see that, can you please sign in? And that's my one request is when we come back in August, is if everyone here can tell 2 people that this is happening and get them here. That's our biggest struggle is how to let people know that we're having these discussions. We always try our best, but it's like impossible to get everybody aware. So that would be my request. With the sign-in sheet, we'll email you, and then if you can tell 2 people or other business owners who are in these buildings is really important, or people who live in the neighborhood. So I think with that, did you want to wrap up or say anything? I think this has been great, so we're really appreciative of all your time, and we'll be on the lookout. So the sign-in sheet is over here. So I think with that, thank you very much.